Hey guys, Connor Richards of Poker News here at the 2024 WSOP in Las Vegas, and this is Life Outside Poker. My guest for this episode is Tyler Todt, who made 7 figures in the early days of online poker before taking a job in the banking world and eventually leaving that to become his own boss as a life and fitness coach. We talk about bum hunting people like Tom Dwan in the online poker streets and balancing poker with other parts of life. Let's get into it. Tyler, I'm super excited to talk to you because you have a super interesting story. You started out and were a professional poker player for many years. Then you went into the corporate world, and then you stepped out of that world and are doing your own thing now. But you're also still playing poker, so a lot of things to get into today. I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I'm a big Poker News fan, and so when you guys kind of hit me up on Twitter, I was really excited, man. So I love everything you guys put out. For over 2 decades, I've just been a huge fan of poker. It's been a big part of my life. I think you can learn so many great valuable skills through poker that I've taken with me into corporate and then into my next venture. So fired up to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, when we saw you were at the World Series of Poker, you're definitely someone we wanted to talk to. And like you said, there's a lot of things from your poker journey that prepared you for other aspects of your life. Let's just start out on the poker side of things. How were you first introduced to poker?
Man, I think like a lot of people, it was the moneymaker boom. For me, you know, I'm 40, and so I was in that time where me and my buddies were playing home games for quarters and things like that. And then moneymaker hits it, and it's like, dude, if he turned 40 into $2.5 million, like, why can't I? You know, we all have this dream. And I remember, you know, much to my parents' dismay, I was in in college in my second year, and I always say my first year I got like a 3.8 GPA. Then I discovered poker that summer. And the next year I think I had like a 1.4 GPA, but I had made like 60K or something grinding on Poker Stars. I put $60 on. I pretty quickly ran it up to a few hundred, and then I very quickly hired a mentor and a guy that was playing bigger games for all the money in the world back then. It was $500 to hire him for 2 hours.
Wow.
And what he kind of unlocked in my brain, I moved up stakes pretty quickly then, and within about a year, I had dropped out of university and played full-time for the next 9 or 10 years, man.
Was it hard finding a coach back then? I know poker coaching is very popular now, but back then there probably weren't a lot of resources.
Back then, I mean, this is what people don't understand way back then. Back in the glory days, there was no, nothing, man. So I used to open tables. Back then, it was 3-6 no limit was the biggest game running on Poker Stars. And I was playing 10 cent, 20 cent, or whatever it was back then. I would just open all the tables of the big games with a notebook, pen and paper, and I'd write down, okay, man, Soros, he's making it 5x a lot when people are limping, and he's showing up with these hands. And so I was just always thinking about the game. That's how I was trying to get better back then. There were no study tools. There wasn't anything. So I just remember back then you could chat, and I just shot him a message. And I remember being like, hey, man, you're one of the best players. Is there any way I could just pick your brain? What would that cost? I don't think he was a coach. I don't think that was the thing, but he's like, sure. And we hopped on a Zoom. We hopped on another one after that. And then the cool thing was we became kind of friends, and he helped me a lot through the journey, man.
Are there any big players who are still around today that you remember competing and grinding with back in those days?
Yeah, I mean, Tom Dwan was Hold'em_no limit back in the day.
You were playing against Tom Dwan?
All the time, man.
Wow.
And then it was just one day, because I jumped up to 2-4 and 3-6, or for the biggest games running back then. We're talking, man, 18 years ago or whatever. And then they introduced 10-20 and 25-50 and 100, 200, 200, 400 shortly after. I kind of always stayed around the 3-6 and the 5-10 for many, many years and just was one of the better players in there. But then all of a sudden Tom was like back then, I joke with my buddies, like we used to bum hunt him. like he wasn't that great of a player. And then all of a sudden one day something must have clicked for him, because then he was just crushing the games we were in, and just like a light bulb must have switched. And then he was crushing 200, 400 and one of the best players in the world. But yeah, that was a fun one. There was Annie Duke. This is why I love the World Series and the atmosphere here, man. It's like you're walking through, and I remember being that 21-year-old kid, came out here with $3,000, and I was going to take over the world, right? And played a $1,500 buy-in. She was at my table. She actually busted me. But it was so cool to just sit at a table with these heroes, because back then it was on ESPN all the time. You watched every show. Like these people were larger than life, and there were just some great memories, man, and some cool times.
Yeah, I'm glad I asked. I didn't realize you were playing with as big of players as Tom Dwan and Annie Duke, 2 very well-known names. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, this is wild times, man. The best stories I have, I probably can't share them if this is like a PG show, but Viffer. I don't know if
Viffer?
The audience is familiar with Viffer,
yes.
But he was a good buddy for a few years there, and probably 9 out of the 10 craziest nights of my life involved Viffer.
Wow.
Back in the day. He was a really, really good dude back then, and he went on to just absolutely crush. And I don't think he's around too much anymore. But
Yeah, we don't see much of Viffer these days. That is true. And so you mentioned that, it was to your parents' dismay, but you were very successful. You ran up, I think, a 7-figure bankroll playing poker. How did your parents react once you actually, made this work for you?
Yeah, man, I'm a dad of 3 now, so I imagine my parents he's going off to college, he's a great student, he's an athlete, all these things, and then I just drive home one day and I'm like, hey, I dropped out, I'm playing poker, and they don't know much about poker, and so I think they were really hesitant at first. It was actually a lot of tension for 6-8 months, and then I ran poker always like a business. I had Excel spreadsheets, I logged the hours I played, I could show my hourly rate. I remember sitting my folks down and just saying, here's my last 10 months. Here's my bank account. And then I really nailed the hammer in the head when they had like a 20th wedding anniversary and I paid for them to go to Hawaii and like, this kid's 22, what's going on? Maybe he knows some things. And I remember sitting him down and actually showing him on PokerStars. And I'd be like, before the guy turned his hand over, I'd be like, he has king queen here. And they'd be like, how do you, are you a wizard? How do you know that? And I go, I've just played 1,000,000 hands and I study 12 hours a day. This is like what I love, So once I kind of got them to that point, I think they were really cool. But obviously at first, man, that's like no parent's dream, your kid comes home and he's going to gamble for a living. So they think,
Once you buy him a trip to Hawaii, though, I think they see, hey, this is legit.
Yeah, the tide turned a little bit then, man. I think they understood that I approached it like a business. And, that's what I tell a lot of the younger kids now that I get to talk to, and I coach a lot now, but have a couple poker clients, even one right now, and I'm always like, dude, you don't see big people in other professions. Like, you don't see a doctor performing a surgery and then buying a Rolls Royce. So, dude, invest. Put some of the money away. And that's one thing I think I did pretty well is I didn't continue to move up stakes a lot, and I probably could have played bigger, but I was always more concerned with buying some assets. And I knew there'd come a day where I probably didn't want to play poker full time. And so, now I just get to play for fun and do that. Whereas, if I go play a 2-5 game today and I get murdered, my life is exactly the same. And that makes it fun to me at this point,
So it sounds like even back then you knew to be investing this money and not just be buying cars and watches or whatever it is.
I did a lot of dumb stuff, for sure. At like 22, 23, I bought the Benz in cash. I did some of the dumb stuff, but I had some early mentors who kind of told me there's a big guy, I don't know if you remember, his name was Bet to Win back on PokerStars, Rob. And I'll never forget this guy. We were in a nightclub and he pulled me aside at 3 a.m. and I'm like, bro, we've made it. This is the greatest life. And he said, it's not going to stay like this. He said, you need to be putting money away. He's like, I've been in the game for 20 years and this boom that we're experiencing right now is not typical. So you need to be putting money away. And that was kind of a light bulb for me that this guy probably knows what he's talking about. And so at that point, 23, 24, I started investing a lot more, putting some money away and things like that. And haven't touched that money in 17, 18 years, and that's done some good things for our family. So that's
great. It sounds like it was mainly online back then. When did live poker become a thing for you?
I mean, Black Friday was like the saddest day of my life. I went from, I was on pace well ahead of schedule to be a Supernova Elite that year.
Oh, wow.
Really grinding. I had dropped stakes down to 2-4 and 1-2 and playing 24 games at a time, just mass tabling. And
wow.
Had a really cool setup. I'd wake up every day at 6 o'clock. I'd drink my coffee. I'd play about 3,000 hands. I'd hit the gym, I'd come home, I'd finish coffee, I'd play 3,000 hands, I'd take a walk or golf or tennis. At night, I'd play 3,000 or 4,000 hands, and that was just kind of run it like that 6 days a week. Really good setup, everything was great, and then, man, I get this call from a buddy. It was my buddy Matt Vingren, shout out to you if you're watching this, and he's like, Ty, I don't know what's going on. I log on to PokerStars, and then it says it's restricted, and that was a really hard point, man. I went through a funk after that, I would say. The girl I was with, her and I, kind of fizzled out. I was not my best version for about a year after that. I mean, I kind of went into a little depression when everything you've put into your life and studied so much and worked so hard at this game that you love so much is kind of taken away. And now I'm supposed to drive 4.5 hours to Chicago to a casino and hope that there's 1-2-5 game or 1-5-10 maybe, and I have to play one game at a time when I'm used to 24. It was a really rough switch, man. And I just, I didn't enjoy live poker as much as I did online. And so that was a really hard year, I would say. And, I played live for 2 years after that, but kind of at the end of my live career, I was kind of just burned out, man. And I was only playing for money. I didn't have a lot of joy in it. And so that's why I went back to school full time. I got married to my current wife now, and she didn't really like the idea of me flying back and forth to Vegas. We lived in Chicago at the time, and, we had a child. We got pregnant on our honeymoon. And so I don't think it was going to float that I was going to be gone half the year playing live poker. So I went back to school, started managing a bank and things like that after that.
Did you have a lot of money online in your account when Black Friday hit, and did you ever get it back?
I did, man. Thankfully, I was all on PokerStars that year because I was going for Supernova Elite. So previously, I had a lot on Full Tilt, on Ultimate Bet, on some of these other sites, but it was 95% was on PokerStars, maybe even higher. And so they paid us back in a month or two, maybe 3, something like that. But I was always really overrolled for the games I played, and so the financial part wasn't that bad for me. I was pretty lucky in that aspect that I had money put aside and I was okay. It was more just like the purpose aspect, right? Like I remember waking up and like I had this purpose, hit Supernova Elite, grind to get better at poker. All my friends were in the poker community. We talked hands, we loved it. And then one day that was just kind of taken from me and I was almost like didn't know what to do. You know, that was my whole identity at that point. Everybody who knew me was, oh, Tyler's the poker guy, right? And so I had to unlearn a lot of things in my life and really find out what's a bigger purpose for me and what am I driven to do and what's winning look like outside of poker, right?
Yeah. I've followed your content and you use that phrase unlearning a lot. And it's a really interesting one because you mentioned that you were really in a funk out of that and you kind of started over, you went and got a corporate job after going back to school and all that. How can they get out of a funk like that? Like how do you dig yourself out of a hole like that?
Man, the first thing I think is surround yourself with great people. And I'm really big into this now. I hire mentors and I have coaches myself and just a good network of people that I can share ideas with. And they're going in the same way as I am in life. So my desired norms, when I sit down and write out, here's the life I want. I want to be a great dad. I want to be a great Christ follower. I want to be wealthy and have passive income. I want to be fit. All these things, right? The group of my small circle around me all desires the same thing. So it's normal, right? So it's not like... if I don't go to the gym for 2 months, I'll have buddies call me out and be like, bro, what are you doing? You know, like you're looking flabby, right? So surrounding yourself with that network. And then the other thing I'd just say to anybody watching this who's obviously into poker, if you can beat poker consistently for years, I truly believe you can beat corporate, you can beat content creation, whatever. Like the same mindset and the same principles it takes to be successful at poker for a long time. Because, man, to win year after year after year after year is not easy. You have to continuously evolve, learn, study. You have to work hard, right? And so I took that same mindset into corporate. Like, it was really hard on my ego, man. The last World Series I played full-time, right before me and my wife got married, I averaged $220 an hour, playing 10-20 no limit the whole summer. You know, left after 5 weeks, up $70K. And then I go home and I go back to school full time. And the only job I could get, man, I'm a college dropout at this point. I'm 29 or 30, a bank teller, making $11 an hour. And I remember thinking like it killed my ego, right? But sure. I remember going in there and saying, I'm going to work my butt off to just get better at this job. And within 2 weeks, they asked me to go from 18 hours to 40. 4 months later, they had promoted me to a relationship banker. So 11 an hour to like 50K a year. And 18 months after that, they asked me to run the whole place. And, you know, then you're looking at like 6-figure salary and things like that. And I just took that same mindset of poker in there. I'm going to get a little better every day. How can I learn this job a little better, get a little better at customer service, get a little better at asking questions, and just applying that same kind of mindset that made me successful and continues to make me successful at poker even 2 decades into the corporate world. And so if anybody's watching this, man, and you're stuck, that's like always my suggestion, man, is just, dude, take those same principles, get a vision of where you want to be in 3, 4, 5 years, surround yourself with those people, hire a mentor, a coach, whatever that looks like, and just get better at the thing you're trying to get better at a little bit incrementally every day.
And you eventually left this banking world and found out that it wasn't for you, but even still, it sounds like it was worth it for you to put in so much work, grow in that industry, and, you know, take those skills somewhere else, it sounds like?
Yeah, 100%, man. So I was, you know, managing a staff of 13, 14 people at Chase Bank for a while, and then a local bank here in Nevada for about a year. I always knew, and I remember telling my wife even a couple years in, I'm not going to do this till I'm 60. Like, I'm a very outside-the-box guy. That's why I like poker a lot, because you can be creative, you know. You run a three-barrel bluff and you just chalk it up to creativity, right? I like the aspect of poker of being kind of outside the lines and very creative. The banking corporate world is very black and white. And so, you know, I was good at it, I think, because I wanted to be good at it, and I tried harder than probably 99% of my people working around me. And also, I'm just a pretty friendly guy, and I'd go in there and be personable every day. But yeah, you know, I always knew it wasn't for me. And so me and my wife sat down a couple years into it, and we said, here's what we would want for me to get out of it. And at this time, I didn't know anything about content creation. I'd never posted a tweet. This is like, you know, 4.5 years ago. But I said, I'm going to start to maybe try and build a personal brand and see what that's like. I have a very interesting and unique story. I think I have some things I can share. And so I just started tweeting with really kind of aimlessly, just here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm reading, here's what I'm learning. And I just little by little started growing, man. And, I remember having a goal of like, if I could hit 1,000 followers, maybe sell a couple ebooks or something, that'd be dope, right? And now I look back 4.5 years later and I haven't missed a day of tweeting. And I brought that same thing with poker, get a little better every day, brought that into content creation and social media and coaching and the things I've done. And 4.5 years later, man, I haven't missed one day of showing up online and tweeting and putting out content and things like that. And found a lot of success. At this point, I have, 250,000 followers across social. My wife does some things too. So we've got about 500,000 people together following our journey, which opens a lot of doors,
That's pretty crazy that 4 years and you haven't missed a day of posting, because it's so fast. I mean, I work in media and I understand just with PokerNews and other stuff that I've done, you always have to be putting out content. You have to be consistent. That hasn't burnt you out yet?
Man, I just love what I do. You know what I mean? My wife jokes I'm like a dog, though, bro. I just wake up every day and I like smile and wag my tail and chase things. And I'm a pretty happy guy. But I run Twitter. I know everybody else kind of runs it where they have automated content and they're going to put I run 99% of mine off the top of my head.
Wow.
I just tweeted a minute ago, I'm coming in here to do this interview and I'm fired up and, then I'm going to play some poker. I just share my life. And an early mentor I hired from Twitter, I remember asking him, there's millions of people that post content. How do I stand out? And he's like, well, dude, you be you. And he goes, he said something to me that I'll never forget that just changed my whole mind around it. And he said, act like there's 1 million people watching you all the time. How hard would you lift today? How intentional of a dad would you? Would you be the dad zoning out on the couch, or would you be dad down there running around? He goes, so just live an on-fire life and then just click tweet and share it. And that's kind of been my strategy with it, man. I wake up every day just thinking about, can I get a little bit better as a dad, as a husband, my faith grow, finances, all the things I want to win at, and then I just simply share them, right?
What do you do on days where you're just not feeling it? How do you get a good message out to people that's inspirational when you yourself are maybe not feeling it that day?
That's where I think being authentic really helps a lot, man, because if you follow my Twitter, any social media, there's many days where I'm like, dude, I don't want to be at the gym. Today was one of those days, man. I woke up, body's sore a little bit. I'm pushing pretty hard here in the next few weeks. And dude, I'm pretty open with it. I didn't want to work out today, so I'm at the gym getting about a 2 out of 10 workout. Hey, some days you just got to show up, right? I mean, that's part of being a professional at whatever you do. I'm certain you wake up on some days and you're like, dude, I got a headache. I don't feel like grinding all the content.
Yep.
What do? You show up and you do your best, right? And so if you just continue to do that, put 1 foot forward, 1 foot in front of the other, good things tend to happen when you think in terms of decades, right? Mm-hmm. And everything I'm going to approach, I'm going to do in terms of decades. With poker, man, 2 decades now I've been playing and winning, right? With content, I see myself still around in decades. And so when you have that long-term vision, it's like, oh, an off day, or this tweet didn't do well, or it doesn't matter, right? Just keep putting out the message, keep getting better.
So we talked about Twitter, but you do a lot of content. You also have a YouTube channel where you've interviewed people and also talked about different areas of your life. You've done poker challenges and things like that. Yeah, talk about the other content that you make other than Twitter.
Yeah, YouTube is so fun, man. I put out 400 or so videos with my boy Alex Hart. Alex is he was a former professional poker player, and he used to run poker vlogs and things like that. And I hate editing and hate all that stuff. He loves that stuff but didn't want to be on camera, so we make a good team.
Yeah.
But we put out a lot of content, man. And yeah, I've play and explain on some games on WSOP where I just talk through my thought process. I've told some old fun poker stories from back in the day that perhaps my wife doesn't like, but and it's just, to me, I have a lot of fun with it, man. When I started YouTube, I remember telling Alex, hey, in 20 years, this will be a great revenue stream for us. And I think it took us 391 videos before we made $1,000. So you're talking 10,000 hours probably, right? But we've enjoyed it. He's my friend. We're building this together. And on the 392nd video, it went viral and it got 8 million views. And that one video made thousands of dollars. And again, that's the principle of my life, I think, that has made me successful more than any other, is just be ruthlessly consistent. Whatever you're going to do. I think everybody, or most 99%, quit before that 392nd one, right? Most of the poker guys who grind and face some adversity in the beginning, and maybe it's just not for me, and they quit when things get hard, right? Or maybe the corporate job gets hard, you don't like your boss. And I've just always been able to have this long-term mindset, just to stay consistent, ruthlessly consistent. And if you have a broad enough, long enough time span, you kind of can't lose if you just keep showing up.
Is that a mindset something that you learned through poker, do you think? Or do you think poker helped you with that?
I definitely think so. I think my dad was really instrumental in that. I mean, my dad's like just a G, man. He's a boss, and they refer to him as the legend. He's 67. The guy still runs he's run around the world 3 times. Like that's how he's like a marathon runner, and he's really, really fit at 67 and just a beast. And he kind of taught me from an early age, like, if you set your mind to something, there's nothing you can't do. I mean, up until I was 15 years old, I thought I was going to be in the NBA. And bro, like, you know, I'm a short white dude, so like, you know, that just wasn't going to happen. But my dad, like I was doing ball handling drills for hours a day in the summer, and I just always had this work ethic that I think he instilled into me. And then I think I brought that into poker. When I went to college and university, I missed basketball a lot because I went from that being my whole life and my identity. I didn't have anything my first year, so I kind of was aimless and drank and partied and things like that. And then I found poker, and I just put that same effort and energy into poker. Just wake up and get better. Wake up and get better. Like, how do we learn? How do we grow? How do we get better? And so I think my dad instilled that in me pretty early.
And you mentioned that you've been winning at poker for 20 years. The game's changed so much since then and gotten probably exponentially harder. How have you kept up with the game?
I mean, number one, I don't play near the stakes that I used to. I mean, if I go sit out now in a 10, 20, 40 no limit game, I'm the whale. I very much recognize that. I don't spend enough time or have enough time to spend studying poker off the table much anymore. And so, you know, I'm going to get wrecked by a lot of the young pros that are me 15 years ago, right? I know they're working 80 hours a week. I'm putting 5, you know, so I don't have any ego. I play 50 NL and 100 NL and 50 PLO right now on WSOP 3 or 4 nights a week. And I'll be real honest with you, if the highest stakes I could play were half a cent, 1 cent, and my net worth is a couple million at this point, I'd still play half a cent, 1 cent. I love the game that much that the money is very, it's cool. It's for me and my wife at this point, it's just vacation money. And it's like some extra stuff that just comes in, a hobby that I love to do, that most guys spend money to golf or whatever. I get to make some money doing something I love. So I've really no ego in it, man. I've continued to drop stakes. There might be a day where I am literally playing 1 cent, 2 cent because I can't beat anything else, but I'm always going to try and be in games where I'm one of the better players. And so I think from the probably 10 million hands I played up until this point, I can still kind of pivot and learn and in-game flow, get away with some of the things I can get away with. And I hope when I go play out here, this will be the first time I've played live in 6 months, it'll be like a 2-5 game, right? Like, again, I'm not trying to go battle against guys and put a bunch of my net worth on the line or gamble anyway, because I know they're better than me. So I think in a 2-5 game, I can probably still hold my own and do pretty well. And that's just been, you know, I don't have an ego. It's probably the easiest way to put it.
Yeah, that's great. And we're here at the World Series of Poker. You mentioned you're going to be playing. Are you much of a tournament guy or mainly a cash player?
Man, 99% of my winnings came from cash. The thing I love about cash is it's deeper. You can be more creative. Nobody can tell me when I have to be there and when I have to leave. That was always a really hard thing with tournaments. Is like, dude, I'm stuck here for 12 hours and then I might like come close to bubble and what was it for? And it just, the mental anguish of that, like I couldn't really handle. I had a couple big scores. I played the main event 4 times back in the day. It was all off frequent player points from PokerStars. Never had much success in it because I couldn't calm down. But I think I got like 3rd in the Sunday Million back in the day for 72 grand one Sunday. And so I had a couple decent tournament scores, but nothing ever really big, man. Tournaments just didn't interest me as much.
And this summer, are you mainly playing cash games or are you going to hop in the tournaments?
Nah, see, I have 2 toddler boys that are 3 right now. And so telling my wife, hey, honey, you got the kids for a week while I go try and play the main event, that won't fly. But I have a 3 to 5 year plan where I'll be playing the main event every year. I'll get to play another couple tournaments every year. That's in my life plan for sure. And at some point, man, I'm going to make a deep run in a World Series of Poker event. That's on my bucket list. So I'll need to hire a coach or somebody that teaches me tournaments because it's I can do well 100 big blinds deep and deeper. We get to like 20 big blinds, I just don't even know what I'm doing, man. So it's, I know I'd have to put in a lot of work before that time gets here.
Well, we look forward to seeing that run. And we were talking before this, and you said that you lived in Henderson. What brought you to Vegas? Was it poker?
Yeah, to be honest, man, me and my wife, I'm working at this bank, and we just hated winters in Chicago. I don't know if you've been to the Midwest at all, but it gets really dark and dreary. And so we were thinking about what are some places to go And I didn't necessarily want to leave at that time. My family was still in Illinois. Her family was there. But once we made the decision to leave, my bargaining chip was, hey, let's go to Nevada because WSOP is legal. And I know that I can make $1,000, $2,000 a month, extra side income. That's just going to take away the time I need to work corporate, right? So that's probably the main reason we moved out here, to be honest. And it was a huge part of my secondary income until Twitter kind of exploded. That was probably my main side hustle, was WSOP.com. Now, like, to be honest, I lose money probably every time I play poker just because I could write a thread or do something that would probably generate more income.
Oh, I see.
But I still just love the game, and I don't see myself ever not playing, to be honest, because it's a beautiful game, man. It's really fun.
How have you adapted to living in Nevada? Because one of the other things you talk about is avoiding the pitfalls of, strip clubs, gambling, sports betting, things like that. How do you build a life for yourself as a family man in Nevada?
Yeah, I mean, we're in suburbia, right? So Henderson's a little different. Like, this is probably my fourth time on the Strip in this year, so we're not here all the time. But I think a lot of that, man, is learning from your mistakes and seeing mistakes other people made early. I could name off, and I won't call anybody out, but 100 poker players in my career that were 10 times more skilled than I was. And they're penniless today, and I saw a lot of those pitfalls. And I mean, a really terrible story, man. When I was 21, 22 maybe, we grinded cash games all day, me and a few buddies, and we were up. And we ended up going to a strip club. And, I'm not going to say I got drugged, but, dude, I had one drink and I don't remember the rest. And I woke up the next day and I had an $11,000 bill. And the last thing I remember is walking in a champagne room and, having 2 bottles of Cristal and, dumping them on people. And then I just kind of, blacked out. And I remember writing down the day after I woke up, I will never do this again. This has to just be a very expensive lesson that I'll never do again, right? And I actually have a standing bet with my buddy Ryan. Shout out to Ryan. If I ever step foot in a strip club again, I owe him $10K on the spot. So not going to be doing that, man. And also just, the guiding, I love my wife. We have a pretty strong marriage. We're 10 years in. So that stuff doesn't really tempt me. Some of the other sports betting and, if you have a weakness, I think Vegas will find it. I lost $2,500 pretty early playing blackjack, trying to do, I think it's called Gambler's Ruin. If you lose 50, you bet 100.
Yeah.
Thinking you're a genius, right? I've got Vegas solved. I remember saying this, if I just get a cocktail and it's $20, I can go bet it, and it works the first 10 times and then you lose 2,500. And so then I remember just saying, I'll never do that again, right? I had to learn some of the things the hard way, but I remember being really intentional around 23 and just saying, if I want to have a long career at this, I cannot hit those, but I can't be in pit games. You don't have an edge. The point of me playing poker is I'm the house. I have an edge. I've worked hard enough to create an edge. I don't want to give that away foolishly at these other games, right? Sports betting, same way. Now, there's guys that have an edge sports betting, and that's awesome. But for me, I didn't. And so, the nightclubs even, some of these things, I just had to learn the hard way, man. I had many, many $1,000 nights, $5,000 nights at these nightclubs, and then one day you wake up and you're like, dude, I have just as much fun in flip-flops with my buddies at dollar beer night. Why are we doing this? Who are we trying to impress? And so, I don't know, man. When you get a little older, I've gotten comfortable in my own skin. I don't really care if you like me or like my life choices. I'm pretty happy with them. And so I feel like I don't need to impress anybody at this point. We live a really cool life and a really unique life. And me and my wife are pretty centered around our faith and our family. And that's just what we're going to win at. So it's pretty easy to avoid the temptations at this point.
Yeah. And I'm sure a large portion of your audience are poker players or understand poker, but for the ones who are more into the fitness and lifestyle stuff, are there people who, I don't know, think that you're a degenerate for playing poker or why are you preaching all this life stuff but then, support gambling or I don't know. Do you get that pushback?
Oh, bro, all the time. I always say from some of the worst people are the church people, man. I was actually on a pretty big podcast. This is 3.5, 4 years ago. And when I mentioned poker, he paused the podcast and said, you can't talk about that.
Wow.
And this was a time where I only had 5,000 or 6,000 followers. And this was going to be kind of a big deal to get on this podcast. And I remember having this moment where I'm like, am I going to be true to myself or not? And I looked at him and I said, then I'm not going to be on your podcast. I said, that's a part of my life. I really enjoy it. And if you're going to be judgmental in that way, I don't want to really be a part of what you have going on. And podcast never aired. That was that, But I get unfollowed. I have people tell me, you can't be a real Christian. I actually made a video on this and put it on YouTube. You can't be a real Christian and play poker. I just think that comes from a place of ignorance, to be quite honest. Poker to me is such a beautiful game. It's very similar to day trading, or, can you not be a broker and in the stock market and be a Christian? It's kind of silly, man. Life is a competitive thing. And I teach my kids this a lot. Life is competitive. Poker develops that competitiveness. There's a beautiful thing when I'm sitting at a table with 8 other guys and they want to take my money and I want to take theirs. And whoever's the most, patient, disciplined, work the hardest off the table eventually is going to win. And so I think it develops all these great skills that you can have in life that, again, have made me successful in other ventures too. And so anybody who can't kind of recognize that or put that together, I think they just come from a place of ignorance. And, I wish them a great life, and it is what it is, man. Maybe I'm not for you then,
You seem very confident in yourself and the things that you're passionate about. Did you have to learn that? Were you ever insecure, especially after dropping out and having a profession that, most people see as just professional gambling?
Yeah, man. I mean, this is real vulnerable, but, I was married at 23, a gal that I actually met here in Vegas. And at 26, I was out here playing the World Series, and she was supposed to come out, and I got a call saying, I'm leaving you. Wow. I'm seeing someone else. And it broke me because, I had just lost internet poker, probably the thing I love the most. Sorry to my ex. That was probably the thing I loved the most, which was probably a problem back then. But and then I lost that, and so I really lost my entire identity. I went through a year to probably 18 months of just a really bad and low season in my life, man. I got down to, I think I weighed 149 pounds. I was just drinking 5-6 days a week, popping Adderall like Skittles. I said I was a pro poker player for that year. I may have played once a month. I just couldn't even get myself out of bed for a while. And then, to be quite honest, man, it was just 2 people that saved my life. One guy at a bar was a personal trainer named Colby. And this guy, I just chatted him up. We were talking sports, and he just said, hey, Ty, you seem like a cool guy. Do you want to meet me at the gym tomorrow? And it was like midnight, and I was like, well, what time do you go? And he said, 5 a.m. And I'm like, bro, I'm like drunk, and that's 5 hours. He said, well, just meet me there. And I did. And this guy, I didn't even know it at the time, but he was training Chicago Bears athletes. He was like one of the best trainers. This guy had been in Men's Health. He's just like a stud, and took me under his wing for like a year. I lifted with him every day. This guy had such an energy and a confidence about him. And I just remember telling him like a couple weeks in, I want what you got, bro, And I just I went and got certified as a trainer because of him. I worked for free at that gym for a year just so I could keep working out and be around him. And I learned a lot of great lessons in life just because of him. Your mindset, your energy, what you're going to put into life, you're going to get out. And he really kind of helped me turn a corner and flip a switch for my life there. And that's why I love what I do now. And I try and put out a lot of positivity and encourage people a lot. Because, man, I always think like somebody might just be where I was back then. And they have this potential to do some really great things. And they just need somebody to reach out a hand and say, hey, meet me at the gym, bro, or meet me for a hike, or let's have a chat, right? And so there were multiple people like that, but Colby really played a key role in that when I was in probably the lowest point in my life.
I think there are a lot of people who would like to make lifestyle changes like that. They want to get in a gym routine, but maybe they don't know where to start, or it just seems like so far-fetched and hard to reach. Where can people start? How can they break into becoming healthier and being more active?
Man, I think it's like anything, right? Like you're going to plan. You need to have a plan, right? So, here at Poker News, you guys don't like walk into the office and be like, what are we doing today? I don't know. Like, dude, you knew you were doing this. You knew you were doing this podcast at this time. You probably know what you're doing next, right? I take 2 or 3 minutes before I go to bed every night, and I sort of outline my day. Here's what I'm working out. Let me lay out my clothes, right? Here's what I'm eating for the day. Like I meal prep, and we have healthy options available. And then just find things you like to do that involve movement. I think the fitness industry in a whole is kind of like scammy in a lot of ways, that you have to do this plan, you have to eat these things. The best workout's the one you want to do the next day. And so, man, if you love running or walking or dancing or yoga or weightlifting, find the thing you like that really involves movement and health and do more of that thing, right? And if you can find a community around you that also likes that, then wonderful. And I would challenge any poker player, the one guy I'm coaching right now, and he's like a mid-stakes guy, but you go to the gym and you track your hourly rate after you're healthy versus when you weren't, dude, you're mentally stronger. I always felt like it was a great edge for me at poker. That, dude, I'm watching a guy eat cheeseburgers across the way, and we're playing a 10-hour cash session. And you watch in a few hours, man, I'm eating my healthy, flaxseed over here and, Greek yogurt, and I'm taking breaks every couple hours to take walks and stay fresh. there was a noticeable difference over the long run, right? And so I just looked at it as if to gain a bigger edge in poker, I needed to be healthy and I needed to have a clear mind and a sharp mind. And so I would just start to ask yourself these questions, man. Where do I want to be in a year, 5 years, 10 years? What can I just do tomorrow that gets me a little closer to that?
I did want to ask whether you thought the physical health side of things helped out the poker side. Sounds like absolutely.
100%, man. Even when I was grinding online, that was just a big part of my routine. Like I'd wake up and, like I said, drink the coffee and then make sure I hit the gym and make sure that I was, back then I wasn't like, lifting is probably as hard as I am now. I didn't even know what I was doing, to be honest. But again, I was going and getting some movement. And I mean, if you study, like they did this awesome study a while back on kids that have been sitting all day. And then when they get up and walk for 20 minutes and the part of their brain that lights up, it's like all these creativity centers and all. It's like I used to set alarms at the poker table. Every 90 minutes, I would miss one orbit. I would get up and walk and I'd stretch. And I really felt like that was a huge edge as I'd see guys and, maybe I was tilting and then I could ask myself a question. Do we really want to be here? Are we plus EV right now? Just giving yourself a break and checking in with yourself is really huge, man. And so, yeah, I looked at it as a weapon in my arsenal to be better at poker. And so I'd challenge any of the poker players. You look at the best guys in the world, man. Jason Kuhn. Look at this guy, man. He's fit as a fiddle. I think that's a weapon for him, right? Like, probably go down the list now. A lot of the elite guys, and I think we'll see this more and more in poker, they'll have mindset coaches. Kevin Martin, I got to play pickleball with him a little while back, man. I love this guy. You get a mindset coach. He's so into fitness right now, and he sees the benefit of it. I think you're going to see the best players in the world. Similar to UFC guys, they have a team around them, nutrition, health, fitness, mindset. Like, let's be the best version of us so we can play our best, right? I think those things go hand in hand.
And especially with poker tournaments, they're very long hours, 12-hour days. And maybe, when people are grinding these, there's not enough time to go get a healthy meal. Should people just be planning in advance and meal prepping, or what's your advice for someone grinding a summer, how they can...
Dude, you can always tell a pro poker player if they got a backpack, right?
Yep.
So, put some healthy snacks in there. That's all I did, was just put some healthy food in your backpack. It'll save you money. You don't go to the $29 grilled cheese fried sandwich and fries or whatever. But just put some healthy snacks in there, man, and plan accordingly. And your body can go 12 or 14 hours without food. In fact, it's pretty healthy for you. To be honest, I'm pretty big into intermittent fasting, and a lot of days I don't eat until noon or 2 o'clock. But I think, if you eat in the, some egg whites or whatever you're going to eat in the morning, you can play from noon until 10 and then not eat and then go eat your big meal and sleep after that.
So given that you're such a big routine guy and someone who people can learn from, what is your typical daily routine?
Yeah, man, I'm up at like 5:05.
Pretty early.
I'm like one of the, and this was a switch, man. And, when I hired my first mentor, I remember him saying, like, beating into me, win the morning, win the day. And I'm like, bro, I'm a poker guy. I used to go to bed at 5 a.m. some nights, So it was really, really hard to adjust that around. It took a couple weeks, I would say, of just getting up and being tired. But yeah, I'm up at like 5. I spend some time, just 20 minutes or so with myself. This just looks like, for me, I chug a couple waters. Every day for a little over 5 years now, I write down a few things I'm grateful for from the day before. And I just spend a moment thinking about those things that make me so blessed. Some of them, they're silly. If anybody else read them, they'd be like, but some are just like my kid giving me a hug the day before. The fact that, man, we're playing in the swimming pool or the park and my kid says a funny thing, right? Or just reasons that I feel really blessed, and I meditate or pray, whatever you want to call it. Just think about those things and remind myself, like, dude, I am such a blessed guy, And I spend, 15, 20 minutes kind of doing that. Then I kind of do all my social media stuff as I take a walk. Takes about 30 minutes, to be honest, to get my tweet out. I retweet some people, they retweet some groups, some things like that, check in with my clients. Then I hit the gym every morning. I'm usually back by the time my kids wake up at about 6:45 or 7. Spend a couple hours with the kids. Then me and my wife, she works from home too. So we're just really like in sync and we trade off a lot. I work a few hours in the morning. She takes the kids on an adventure, or vice versa. If I don't have client calls or anything, I'll take the kids in the morning, she'll work, and then we'll kind of flip it and then just do family stuff at night.
That's great. And social media is a tricky thing because you have to be consistent and active on it, but you don't want to spend all day on it. It's super easy to waste a ton of time on social media, but I imagine you're not much of a doom scrolling guy. You're probably not
Yeah, when you know this, like when you do it for a living, the last thing I want to do at night, man, is like
scroll through
Twitter. You know, I hit some of the people that I feel like I need to hit that'll make me successful. Some of the bigger accounts I need to engage on, and then dude, I watch poker content. Like that's how I kind of veg out at night. I love Negrano's vlog, man. I think that's so fun and so entertaining. I like watching some of the big hands and seeing some of the storylines that are still going on to feel like I still have my foot in the game. That's a lot of the way I usually zone out at night after my kids go to bed, is like consuming some poker content and calling it a night.
That's good. So one thing that you've talked about in your content is that you have what you call the 5 pillars of life. I believe there are faith, fitness, family, friendships, and finances. Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
How'd you come up with that?
Man, it was an early mentor, and he just challenged me and said, like, what do you want to be world class at? And at the time I was like, I don't know, I just kind of go into a job every day and hadn't really thought in terms of that. And he said, well, take a week and start to journal and think about what are the areas in your life that if somebody were to meet you within 5 minutes, they're like, oh, there's like, this guy's good at that, or this guy like looks like he's good at that, right? And so that's what I came up with. I want to have a big faith, and I always say it's a personal faith. And dude, some of my best friends are atheists, Jewish, Muslim, I'll meet you wherever you are. It drives me nuts when people think we can't be friends if you don't believe everything I believe, right? But I have a big personal faith, and I want to be able to share that with anybody who's open to hearing about it. I want that to be the pillar of my life and where my peace comes from and things like that. Then the next one I wrote down was faith. It was fitness, and I put that ahead of family for a reason. And that's kind of controversial to some people, but for me to be my best self, to be the best husband, to be the best dad, to lead my family the way I need to be high energy. I can't come into my house and like mope around and, like the family's going to go as dad's energy goes. I always say that, right? And so I need to be the best version of myself. I need to be mindful of what I'm putting into my body, if I'm getting my movement and my workouts in, so that I can be my best for my family. And so I put that piece second. And then family, man, is just obviously like, look, if you got kids or you don't, like family is everything, right? And then friendships, I want to be known as a great friend, man. I want my friends to know I'd be there at the drop of a hat for them and have their back and things like that. And finances, look, money's important. And people that say it's not are just foolish in my mind. And, again, I'll go back to all you young poker. Somebody's going to be watching this and you're going to have a big score this summer. Invest some money. Buy assets. Don't go to the nightclub. Don't go blow it like most other people do. Start to create wealth, actual wealth. It makes life so much better. It allowed me to fire my company at 37 and do what I want to do every day. It allows me to wake up when I want to wake up. I don't have to ask if I want to go on vacation. So start to learn. And I didn't know any of these things 5 years. I just have learned off Twitter, off social media. There's so many resources you can use now to learn. And so becoming knowledgeable about finances and how to use your money to make money so that you don't have to work for money your whole life, right?
And what are some of the investments that people should be making? Is this crypto or stock investments or retirement funds?
I'm so boring, man. I'm the most boring investor you'll ever meet. We own a bunch of farmland back in Illinois that my uncle farms it. We bought it for about $7,300 an acre. It's probably worth $20K an acre now. That was just kind of a lucky investment, but my uncle talked to us a lot about it and told us it was good. We do no work with that. We just collect 3 checks a year. So if you can start to think in terms of passive, how do I earn dollars when I sleep? The next one for me was just creating a lot of digital content. Like at this point, I've probably sold 6 figures worth of digital content. So what's a topic you could write about and teach people? You don't have to be the number one guy in the world, but there's people below you that would pay for that knowledge, right? And so I've written a book on fitness, on fatherhood, on poker, some devotional, fitness devotionals, marriage content, things like that. And then, having an audience, obviously it helps people that can go and buy those things. But, when you wake up and you've made money while you've slept, it's a pretty good feeling. Investing in dividend stocks in the stock market. Again, I'm really boring. Just S&P 500, VOO, just some very basic stocks that, anybody can point you towards. I'm not an expert in any of this stuff. I just talk to people that are a lot smarter than me.
Yeah, well, sounds like great advice for anyone. All right, just a couple of general questions here as we wrap up. This is one I'm excited to ask. This is a new question I'm throwing in, but I'm a big reader, so I'm going to ask you, what is a book that you'd recommend? And maybe let's go fiction and nonfiction.
So, man, a book that changed my life was Jocko Willick's Extreme Ownership. And I say this with a caveat, I didn't even finish the book, man. I read like 80% of it, but I just had so much. I had 20 pages of notes from it. This book just sort of taught me that everything in life is your fault. And if it's not your fault, it's your responsibility. And before I had read this book 5 years ago, it was, like a standard guy. I'm just kind of like, well, it's not fair. They got the bad beats. It's not fair. It's not fair, right? And I just sort of changed my mindset around after reading that book and taking a bunch of notes that, dude, everything in my life is my responsibility. If I don't like the way that me and my wife are doing something, it's not her fault. It's my fault to communicate to her how much it means to me, right? And so just an easy example is, shout out to Joey Ingram. Maybe he'll watch this, right? I love Joey to death. I texted with him before I was on here that I was down here. Once every couple months, I love being a dad. But I used to kind of get resentful, like, it's the same thing every day. And I kind of miss going out with my buddies and playing tennis or pickleball or whatever that is. And I had this in the back of my head, sort of like resentment almost from my wife. Like, well, I don't get this. And I read that book and I realized, well, she can't read my mind. So I need to sit her down and tell her how important that is to me. And once I did that, an amazing thing happened. She said, well, me too. And now we do a thing where once a month we give each other 24 hours a day, 24 hours a month off. So this is what I have right now, man. I'm not a dad right now. Like, I get 24 hours to come down here and play poker and maybe grab a steak with Joey and take a walk or play tennis or whatever that looks like. But that book, Extreme Ownership from Jocko Willink, just changed my whole mindset around that. And then the next one, Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yeah.
I'm not a fiction guy, to be honest.
That's fine. I have read Atomic Habits, and that is a great one.
Huge one, man. Yeah, I think I've read that 3 or 4 times, extensive notes on it, and that can really just reprogram your brain to, show me a person's habits, I'll show you their future.
Yeah, those are great recommendations. I'll have to check out that first one. All right. You're generally a very positive and optimistic person, but what's something in the world or in your life that makes you hopeful?
It makes me hopeful?
Yeah.
Oh, man, there's so many good people, dude. I mean, like just walking through here right now, it's just like the energy, like everybody comes to the World Series like, I can be the guy, right? Like I can make that one run that's going to change the rest of my life. Like that's what gives life a lot of meaning, is like hope and optimism. And I really believe life is just a choice, man. Like everything we do is a choice. If you want to be happy, it's a choice that you make every day, right? Like I'm either stuck in traffic and this sucks, or I'm like really grateful I have a car and some places to go and I can turn on tunes, or I could listen to a great podcast, or I could call my mom and check in, or whatever that is, right? So I believe it all comes down to a choice. And man, I'm so bullish on humanity. I think we're doing it, man. You ever just walk around and you like look at all that we have and you're like, dude, up until a couple hundred years ago, like, man, we had to be nervous if a warring tribe was going to come wipe us out. And like we had food scarcity and we had all these like, and now we're just like, dude, we get to wake up every day and push a button and get healthy, amazing food, and we get to be around all the people we want. And I get, how many people will watch this interview from different continents? Yeah. Like, do you realize how cool that is, And like, I can go in a shower and push a button and it's climate controlled and this little, like, it's just like such a gift, man, to have all the modern things that we have now. And to me, that's only getting better and better and cooler and cooler. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons to be very optimistic about the future, man.
That's good to hear. It's good to hear the optimistic side of where things are going. What is a piece of advice that you would give to a younger version of yourself?
Man, don't care what other people think. You have to run your own race. Life is a single player game. That's good. You have to just be comfortable in your own skin. And I think for far too long, looking back, I bought the Mercedes so people would think I was doing well at poker. I bought some expensive watches so people would think I was making it. And I just think that's so foolish. And again, I don't fault anybody who has an awesome car. If you like cars, that's awesome. I'm not a car guy. So why was I spending $60K on a car, right? You need to find what makes you happy, what gives you purpose. When your alarm goes off in the morning, what do you want to spring up out of bed and attack and win and go crush, right? And if it doesn't make sense to anybody else, that's okay. But if it makes sense to you, and if that's poker for somebody out there watching that, don't let the naysayers and maybe colleagues tell you you're foolish, or your parents or whatever. I remember telling my parents, you're not allowed to tell me anymore at 21. I'm not going to come home anymore, and I'm not going to call if you give me a guilt trip. This is what I chose to do. I love it with every part of me, and this is what I'm going to do for a season of my life. You got to hop on board. And they did, and you can't let other people define what success is for you. you have to have a very clear vision of this is winning in my life. I'm certain there's people that look at me and say, you know, I know there are. Like, dude, with that social media following, you can be making $50K a month and stuff. Like, I don't care about that. I make a really good living. We have a really good life. I don't need a bunch of fancy toys. I have total freedom over my time. I get to be with my kids 6-8 hours a day. That's winning to me. And so define what winning is to you and then run 100 miles an hour at it. Doesn't make sense to anybody else. That's okay.
Yep. Great advice. All right. Last question here. We've already talked a lot about the parallels between poker and other things and how poker has helped you in other areas of your life. But what is your favorite life lesson that can be drawn from poker?
Oh man, just be obsessed with the process. You cannot affect the outcome. And I remember when I knew I made it as a poker pro, I was out here during the World Series. I think I was like 24, 25. I was playing a 10-20-40 game at the Aria. And I got in middle set versus a pair and a flush draw and a naked flush draw on the turn for, I think it was 31K. And I'll never forget this, man. I never ran it twice. I thought, well, my mindset's stronger and I'm not going to run it twice, right? Probably an idiot, like, you know, I'm 25. But I remember saying, no, I'm not running it twice. And I'll never forget is like the 6 of hearts hit on the river and it didn't. And I remember all I did was I said, hey, man, nice hand. It was like the whale in the game that you don't want to ever poke, right? And so I just said, oh, dude, I would have never folded your hand either. I slid him all the money. I took like a little walk because it was one of the biggest spots I'd ever lost. And I came back and played really well. And then I went and hung out with my friends that night and never told one of them. We went bowling. We had a really fun night and nobody knew I lost the biggest pot of my life. And I knew at that point, like, dude, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and get better at poker. And I looked at that thing, that negative thing that happened is like, hey man, if I can overcome that, then it's so much easier the next time. And so, you know, whatever happens to you in life, I think it happens for you, not to you. You can grow through it. If you have a mindset of just, oh, like this is a challenge and it's actually an opportunity and I'm going to continue to get better. And so, man, poker again, dude, it's just so many great things. But like, I didn't go into social media thinking I want this many followers. My goal was to be obsessed with the process. I'm going to tweet 5 times a day. I'm going to engage 30 minutes a day. I'm going to write X amount of threads a day. That's what I can control. So if you're a poker player, like, man, I'm going to show up to the table with this mindset. I'm going to be hydrated. I'm going to have movement in the day. I'm going to play my best. I'm going to study off the table. I'm going to do you can't control what card falls or what card doesn't. So let go of the outcome and be completely obsessed with the process. That's what poker really taught me.
Yeah, great advice. And you'll have plenty more advice for people on your social medias. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, Twitter is where I hang out every day for sure. I'm on there a couple hours a day. It's at @TyRomper. That was my old Poker Stars name back in the day. Nice. Big picture of Will Ferrell and Mugatu, I remember it was mine. And then on YouTube as well, I think we're up to close to 35,000 subscribers in a couple years we've been on there. And that's just my name, Tyler Todt, T-O-D-T. Those are the 2 big spots on that. Come say what's up and, you know, come join along the ride.
Well, Tyler, thanks for coming in during your 24 hours off from the family, but it was really great talking to you and hope to see you around the rest of the summer.
This is an honor, and I want to say thanks for all you guys put out, man. I mean,
thank you.
I know how hard you guys work, and I'm so grateful, like even just the World Series, all that goes into allowing this great event for people to happen and you know, come here all over the world, and the coverage you guys put around it and the content. That's not easy. That's a day in and day out grind. So thank you guys, man. It's an honor to be here, and just really appreciate it, man.
Well, we definitely appreciate you saying that, and it was an honor talking to you, so thanks.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. I feel like we should hug now.